Well, I'm glad you're getting to go and sing and minister. That's great. I love to hear the things that you're doing like that. I remember when I was your age, getting to go out and sing and do like that. That was wonderful. Even in the nursing homes and things, you know.
Do you hit a certain age where people just stop asking you to come and sing?
No, it's just seasons. If you're out there in the mainstream, they'll keep calling. But sometimes you get a dry spell. But we got calls all the time to come. You know, every so often it'd be somebody's homecoming or a revival or something. But it never really slowed down. It would just be sporadic. But the more you get out there and know the people, and they know where you came from and what all God's done for you, the more they're going to want you to come. And that's kind of how it was for us back in the day. After your sister was little and she was sick and everything, how we got to go out because we had a story to tell about how God had, you know, healed Heather and brought her through so many things. And the same with Johnson and David, they had a testimony. So we used that kind of as a forerunner to tell about, you know, our life and what God had done and everything. And so we got a lot of calls like that. You know, people love for us to come. We got on a contest one time down at the Lincolnton Civic Center, and we was trying to see if we could get a free record deal, but it didn't work. But somebody else got it, but and they didn't use it, which is sad. But yeah, they had a great song that they sang, but it was a good song that they won with. But it was an original somebody had written, but they won. But it was an apostolic group that came, and they were real good though. They sang "There Is a Land." It was a beautiful song. But anyway, yeah. But ministry don't slow down. It takes spells. You get in the right circles, and you're in the right circles, so people will call. They'll just be sporadic sometimes. God's will is going to be accomplished. I think so often that when I think about the scripture that says His word is not going to return void, you know, how it took so long in my life for me to really know Jesus like I wanted to and needed to, and all the things that God has done in my own life, how to be thankful, how to be grateful, how not to be negative, how to love people and be genuine and not to have a temper and things like that. But you grow with things like that, and just, you know, age changes people. My grandma, when she was a young woman, she said she used to be high strung. My mother's mother, she was the sweetest.
Oh, really?
She was the sweetest, godly woman. Not high strung in a bad way, but she'd get excited about things because she was trying to raise 8 or 9 children, you know, and she had an alcoholic husband. But they were dirt poor, and so, but she said she was kind of high strung, and she said, Brian, when you get older, because I was talking to her about it one day, so I said sometimes I get short, you know, when y'all were little. And she said that's going to change one day. She said you'll mellow out just like me. And I've watched it in my own mother's life. You know, of course, Mama always gave us a sweet kiss in the morning and at night, but she's become more gentle and tender with us as the days go by. She's more like her mother. But my grandma was a special lady. She was a apron wearing grandma. Never wore. I never saw grandma in a pair of slacks or anything. She was just an old fashioned Baptist girl. She loved the Lord with all her heart, and she did everything she could to love everybody. She never judged anybody. Just a sweet, sweet person. And much like your grandmothers, you know. And your Grandma Plemons, she was a sweetheart and a great songwriter and a poet, as your Grandma Doug is. And you know, a lot of people that I admire, you know, through the years in my life, how God has used people. Like, you know, my favorite songwriter is Dottie Rambo, you know. And I have some good black songwriters too, Dorothy Love Coates and different people that wrote some of the historic songs. You know, I've always enjoyed them. But Dottie Rambo, I guess, was my favorite. Y'all know that because I drowned you on it when you was growing up. I drowned you on Dottie Rambo, but she taught me how to sing when I was a little boy. Me and Johnson and Patty, we would lay in front of the fan in the basement. We lived in the basement then, where Mom and Dad's house was at. We had a big fan. We didn't have air conditioning, so we would lay there in front of the fan and we would sing with the record player. And the fan would make a sound that it would make your voice kind of harmonic, you know. Mm-hmm. And same with the Leslie on an organ, you know. organ sounds so plain and droll until you put a Leslie to it, you know. And so we got in front of that fan. We started singing through the fan and everything. And the more we would listen to the Rambos and different people like that, we learned to harmonize, you know. But it was a gift. Everybody that can sing it is a gift. And not everybody can sing. You know, I've learned that some people, they just can't pick it up. But I love to sing. I've always loved to sing and love to give my gift back to the Lord, you know. We used to go to the nursing homes and different churches and everything. And I loved to do that, to give that gift back to God, because He was good to bless me with it. And all of our family, you know, your mom was a great musician and a singer. And then your grandparents, all of them could sing, you know. Especially Grandma and Grandpa Dove, they was very musical. Their family was very musical, and I got to know them. All of them had everywhere they went, they had a traveling band. Each one of them played an instrument, and it was very interesting to hear all of them play an instrument, because it was like a high school band, and they are all harmonized. And so, but I enjoyed growing up in the gospel music and under their good preaching. Growing up in the Church of God, I learned so much. I sit under the most seasoned preachers, seasoned ministers, pillars in the church that I respect so much to this day, and most all of them are gone to the Lord now, but I wouldn't take nothing from my raising for what I learned. And I remember the first time that I felt the Holy Spirit. I was 7 years old, and they had just got an organ in the church up there at Bethlehem. There used to be Isaacs Creek where I went, just a little boy, but I had to move up to the front pew. We sat on the second pew, and beside our stained glass window, Mom and Daddy had their name on the window. All the people, they'd remodeled the church back in the 60s, and they had their name put in the window that they bought. And I was sitting there, and Daddy said, I think you're going to have to move up, because our pew was getting crowded. We had 7 in our family, so I moved up to the front corner, and Phyllis Teague was playing the organ, and she was singing a song. I don't remember the song, but the melody of the song and the way that the music was played and the preacher was preaching, it was really sweet, you know, how he was telling us that how the Lord loved us so much. And I began to feel that warmth all over me, and I felt the Holy Spirit for the first time, and I cried. I didn't know why I was crying. I just was crying and just weeping, just a little boy, but I didn't know why I was crying. But I tell you, when you get in with the Spirit of God, you can be a little boy or an old man. It's always good. It's always good. Yeah. So.
That's good stuff.
I could talk all day, but you probably got stuff you want to say too.
Oh no, I'll try to fish for something. So, see, I can cut stuff.
Yeah.
You know, as we go along here.
Yeah. But I've seen a lot of wonderful things in the church when I was growing up. We were sometimes fashionably late a few minutes. We'd all be sitting on the carport, Daddy blowing the horn for a moment, hurry up. We'd all be out on the carport saying, Lord, move her, you know, and so because she's fixing her hair and whatnot and getting ready for church. And it was kind of funny, but we'd get there. Brother Earl Jones, he was the Sunday school superintendent most of the time when I was growing up, and or different ones were, but he was mostly for the longest time. And he preached before we went into the service. You know, we had devotions before we went into the Sunday school class, and he'd be preaching, and we'd sing a hymn. We'd sing one hymn before when we first started church, and all our family sat up there. And the older we got, the more we blended. You know, that was interesting. How our family always loved the hymns, and we'd all sing the hymns in harmony. And the Spirit of God back in those days, Josh, people was not proud like they are today. They was more willing to let God come on in the room, you know, and they had a lot of shouting services before we got to Sunday school, and people were, you know, being blessed. And the older women in the church were so happy. The men too. They were all praying. When we began to pray, all the people prayed together out loud, and it was the sweetest thing, because they all prayed, you know, with all their heart, and the Spirit of God would move. But then we went to Sunday school. Always had great Sunday school teachers, and Janice and Mama taught us for a while. Aunt Dorothy, Ann Lale. We had some good, Sister Walker, and even Cheryl McGowan. She was a teacher for a while. We had some good teachers. Maudie, they were all great Sunday school teachers and taught us about Jesus. And we had a little TV in the nursery, or it wasn't in the nursery, it was in the in the kindergarten room, I guess you call it. And you put a slide down through it and had a record player on top, and it would play the story, and they would put the slide down through as it was telling the story. And it taught us about Jesus, and it talked about Peter, and it talked about Jonah, it talked about the fish, that were caught, and all the things, all the Bible stories that, made me to know Jesus and about God and His greatness and everything. And then the older I got, I wanted to go to the bigger class, and when you got 7 years older, maybe 8, you could go downstairs to the big class. So I went downstairs to the big class, and I remember we had great teachers down there and everything. But as a kid, you can't hardly sit still, but I think you remember a lot of times the way the lesson was taught more than you remember the lesson. And we had some great teachers. But anyway, my Sunday school teachers, they said the sweetest prayers and everything. But they believed in us kids, and they loved us kids. On Wednesday night, before the service would really get started, they had the kids' youth choir to come up to the choir. And we went to Sister Walker. She taught us to sing songs. We sung a bunch of good songs, and Reach Out to Jesus, He's Reaching Out to You, and some good songs like that, but on the sunny banks and all that. But they would they'd draw numbers, and they'd give us quarters, if they got our number, and that would tickle the children to death to get a quarter, And so different ones would give their quarters and stuff, but it was so precious. And all the old people, mostly, just a few are left at the Bethlehem Church now, but they were so precious, and they loved the Lord so much. And we didn't have a fuss in church. We never had a turnover in our congregation. The people loved one another genuinely, and they loved the Lord, and they prayed, and they all fought the devil together instead of fighting against one another. We had a wonderful church growing up, and I have to say, I saw a lot in church, but that was the sweetest, best unified church. It was mostly a family church when I was a little boy. A lot of the Lales family was kind of spread out, and then we had a lot of other people that come too. But there was Bessie and Joel Lale gave that land for that church to be built there in '34, and their son started it. Troy Lale. But I love history, so I talk about history a lot. But there's so much to be learned from older people and what they gave. Just like my grandpa, different ones of them that went into the service, and what they did in the Navy, and my uncles and my great uncles. The one that lost his life over the Adriatic Sea, and his parachute they got hit. He was a tail gunner, and they got hit, and his parachute got caught in the propeller, and it drug him down into the sea, and so he was never found or anything. So they just put a monument up with his picture in it over Antioch Baptist Church where he was a member. But my mother's family, the Hollers, they were real good people, real kind people, and real good hearted. That's where my home was for years over there. I loved it, living up on the mountain up there. And but they were kind people, and my grandmother was a very good woman. But I learned a lot from them, from that side of the family, about the Lord and their kindness. And then my aunts and uncles on the Honeycutt side as well, they was real sweet people, good people. And two of my aunts, Dorothy and Janice, they was so kind to me growing up, and tried to be a light to me and help me and encourage me. And I always was real kind to help me to grow up, to love me. And even though I had issues growing up like every kid does, I had to grow through things, and even as a man. But I learned that God helps us. He helps us to get through and to learn things. But so many good memories. And Daddy's just now selling the home place over there where I grew up. But it's interesting, when we cleaned the house out, I was thinking about all the memories that was in the home place. Me and Greg had the blue room, and Patty had the green room, and Johnsy and Amy had the pink room, and Mom and Daddy had the gold room, And so then I eventually got the green room. When Patty and Johnsy got married, we all got our own room. And but a lot of interesting things, growing up. And we'd take walks down to the river as kids, and we lived not too far to the river down there, and just had the best time growing up over there in Bethlehem. And lots of good church friends. Mom and Daddy was very congenial, so we had a lot of church friends in. They invite people down on Sunday nights or Wednesday night or whatever. The Jones family would come down, and a lot of the other church members. Mama would have some kind of sandwich food or a Spanish bar, they called it back then. That was a cake or coconut cake or something or other. and Pepperidge Farmers always works, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So and they'd have tea or whatever, but it was good having fellowship with the brothers and sisters in the church, and they just loved to talk about the Lord and encourage each other and talk about their life and share with their life and tell what things about their life and what all God brought them all through and how good He was, and talk about their family, their history, and it was interesting to mingle with your friends like that, and there's good camaraderie with church folk. You learn a lot from the elderly too, and I've sat around and listened to many a time to the old people. Brother Grady Harris, when I was just a young man, he was always the choir director at the church up there, and way back in the day, and he'd come down and see Daddy once in a while, and the older people, they'd sit around and talk to Daddy, you know, and you'd learn a lot from hearing the older people talk about the Spirit of God and how He moved in the church and the things that would happen in the church and the blue mist in the church when the Spirit would move, and the cloud that would come up. And I remember when Brother Summit, Daddy's good friend, and our family's good friends, we went to, he pastored a lot of churches in the Church of God, so we went to Old Fort Church of God when I was 9 years old to a revival with Jim Betts. And they had fantastic music back in the day. John Lavender played the organ. He had an organ. He whooped that organ out, and that's what made me start liking organs. I like an organ. It's a sweet instrument. But anyway, it kind of mellows the heart for worship. But anyway, they had the Spirit of God was moving in that revival, and Brother Betts was praying for everybody. But the Spirit of God touched me. I felt the Spirit of God when I was 7 at the Bethlehem Church, but I did not realize how the Holy Ghost would move on somebody really until I was 9. And he come back there and prayed for me in the aisle. And Mama, she kept pressing me to receive the baptism of the Holy Ghost. Anyway, I waited for a long time, but Jay, you're making me lose my thought. But anyway, I was blessed that night. And that was the first night that we got to go to. You want me to stop for a minute?
Yeah, we'll come here in a minute.
DJ.
Church for all.
Okay.